Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for this very nice presentation, giving a broad overview and also going into some of the details. There are a few questions. One of them from Baron Mons. Are you here? Hey, Mark. Um, Very clear presentation. Do you work with professional data stewardship centers in your and other institutes? Can you answer that?
Um, Sorry, there's a bit of echo in your signal, so I couldn't quite get it clearly.
Okay, actually, this echo is because I have my microphone on.
Okay, I'll try again.
Okay.
So here's the question from Baron Mons. Very clear presentation. Do you work with professional data stewardship centers in your and other institutes?
We do. So we have some communication with with data modeling mainly. We basically use so by data stewardship though, you're referring to like who will host the data, or maybe
Does maybe Baron want to turn on his microphone? If that's possible. Yep, okay. You cannot turn
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So we are setting up this international network of data stewardship competence center in institutions. And they actually help the researchers to make their data fair, because most researchers, as you correctly said, it's not their core business in their mind as such. So there is even a GoFair implementation network of data stewardship competence centers around Europe, and actually also in the US and Brazil. And they are sharing their protocols for verification and choices they make. And it could be very helpful maybe to get in contact with them.
Yeah, that would be maybe if you could tell me a link I can follow. I mean, mostly we've been keeping up to date with organizations such as, or like services such as Zenodo, which is where we're going to be posting a lot of our data, and keeping up to date with relevant metadata schemas and so on posted by RDA. So
yeah,
I mean, we're using those to try and guide us in modeling our data, but when it comes down to actually the tools that we need to implement and how we model our own data and make it sort of practical for us to input all this metadata, that we've done mostly with in cooperation with software development companies.
Yeah. And you need to have the domain knowledge to actually fill the metadata templates. But the generic choices that people make are frequently the same, and it's useless to repeat authorization, authentication formats, and those kind of things. Yeah. So I'll send you a link to the network and see whether you can benefit from that. Okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Very nice presentation. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Christoph. I think you're muted.
Maybe Mark, you could also then post the link to your GitHub page where you host this XPS JSON schema.
Yeah, where should I post that?
Zachary Trott into the chat.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's also another question before you do so. Maybe you can address this one. A question by Matthew Evans. How widespread are the digital tools you mentioned in your material science, LIMS in particular? Are there existing open source solutions?
Yeah, there are. So we've actually, there's a few of them. One of them is called, I'm not sure how to pronounce the word, Seniet or something. And it's an open source LIMS. We've installed it on our own servers just to get to know it. I mean, the one issue with a lot of the LIMS is that they're mainly aimed towards analytical, like organizations that offer analytical services. And so they're structured that way, and some of the stuff is kind of hard coded in there, but there are still a lot of useful things that one can take from a LIMS system to just help people manage their samples and schedule their instruments. However, a lot of solutions nowadays, the new eLab notebooks, for example, are doing a lot of the LIMS functionality with the notebook. So they're kind of merging together. So for example, like LabStep is a good example, and eLab FTW, I guess, sort of does some of that as well. And yeah.
Which is actually open source.
Which is also open source, yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions you would like to promote, Matthias? Not yet? Okay. Well, here I have another question here by Tamash Harashti. Excuse me for the poor pronunciation. A nice talk, thank you. As several groups are working developing their standards, how can we focus the efforts avoiding the uncontrolled proliferation of slightly different standards about similar areas, resulting in an impossible amount of definitions to be implemented?
I mean, I'm really impressed by how things work with GitHub and open communities. People just posting all what they've done, and you know, lots of good documentation. I think as these start to form within the community, then yeah, anyone can contribute on a GitHub repo, for example. But I think also a great way to start is, I mean, the internet itself has so many really good standards that have evolved over several decades and lots of trial and error for sure. And so I think, you know, learning some basic, you know, how to write a JSON schema and then write all of your data in, or your data schema in a JSON schema, and then post this on GitHub, and then, you know, sort of go back and forth with the community. People will make suggestions and you know, suggest changes and so on. I think this is a good way to do it. I mean, there are, of course, lots of, in some domains, some standards out there. I mean, many of them are maybe inaccessible or incomplete or something. And I think we can go back to those, and there's still lots of good stuff in those standards that you can take and migrate into a more modern, open standards definition. So I think if the community does that, then a lot of these old things will be sort of meshed into the new schemas.
Mm. Maybe there's one short question also from Rolf Würdemann. How do you deal with different writings or keywords if they're very similar? So like beam energy versus beam dash energy. So do you have any experience with that?
Well, unfortunately, so we would love it if we had a full out, perfectly mapped ontology for our domain. That would be fantastic, but we don't. And it's a lot of work to do so. And first, we're starting with some baby steps, so just try to get people involved. So what we're allowing, we define, so some things we have our own definition for, which we need in order to host a service. Like we have to enter it in a database and give it some kind of name. And so we do that, and those will be available on the forms when people fill them out. So most people, even if they use a different term for it, will at least probably recognize the term that we are using. And then for areas where developing a very, very well-structured schema is a lot more challenging because of the diversity, then we're leaving it up to, at the moment, tagging, but we're restricting tags to tag types. So we'll have a whole bunch of different tag types. So for example, one of them would be sample composition or sample form or something like that. And so these are two different tag types. And then people can add tags to describe. And when someone's adding a tag, there will be like a suggestion, which will essentially search through all the existing tags in our database, so that to try to minimize the duplication of like two tags meaning the same thing but written differently. And who knows, maybe someday in the future we might be able to use something like a word to vec or something like that, so that when it suggests a new tag, it suggests something like that's just conceptually similar, rather than normally when you do it, it's like if the first two letters are the same, it will give you a term that's you know, already in the database. But if the first two letters are not the same, then you might end up writing a completely different tag in there. So,
okay, I think we have to move on. We have one more question by Davide Di Stefano fast question and a fast answer, please.
Sorry.
I think, Davide, you have to unmute your microphone.
By mistake, so it's a very quick question. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, it's fine.
Very nice talk. Thank you.
Oh, I don't hear you anymore.
Maybe, if I understand correctly, it was just a comment. Congratulations on the talk.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
So thank you very much again, Mark. And I think we continue in the same spirit.